Her lips were already parting. The first grey light of morning was coming through the tall windows of her corner office on the 14th floor, and Marcus Osai was standing 3 feet from her desk, with his coat still on, the resignation letter already folded in his breast pocket, and she was looking at him in a way she had not looked at him before. Not the way a CEO looks at a porter. Not the way a woman looks at a man who carried her home the night before. Not any way he had a name for. She drew a breath. He waited. He had been waiting his whole life to leave a room like this one. He almost did. There are silences that arrive like a held door, brief, ordinary seeming, but everything depends on whether you walk through or step back. Most people step back. They mistake courtesy for safety. Marcus had started at the Alderton Grand 14 months ago. He had not started there because it was where he belonged. He started there because it paid bi-weekly, accepted his schedule request for school pickup at 3:30, and asked no questions about the structural engineering license he no longer had the bandwidth to renew. The work was straightforward: carts, luggage, the occasional room delivery, the occasional guest who needed steadying in the elevator. He wore the uniform, dark jacket, brass name tag, and he was good at being unremarkable. He was also good at most things he tried. This had not always served him. The Alderton's lobby ran to marble and low light, and a staff of 63, most of whom knew Marcus by name, and almost none of whom knew what his name had once meant in certain circles. He was not hiding, exactly, he was reorganizing. His daughter Zara was 7. She had her mother's collarbone and her mother's habit of tilting her head slightly to the left when she was deciding whether to trust you. She had Marcus's patience, which she exercised every morning when he made her oatmeal before school, and every evening when they read 2 chapters of whatever library book she had selected that week. She was, as his mother had observed more than once, an unusually quiet child. What his mother meant was that Zara did not talk unless she had something to say. Neither did Marcus. Naomi Voss had been CEO of Alderton Hospitality Group for 2 years. She had taken over from her father, whose photograph hung at the east end of the lobby, in the company of 3 other white-haired men who had run the group since its founding. She was 41, had a master's in international business from a school in Lausanne, and was, according to the quarterly newsletter Marcus occasionally glanced at in the break room, committed to modernizing the group's culture and employee experience. He had formed no strong opinion of her. She came through the lobby twice a week, usually with her assistant, usually speaking into her phone, usually not looking at the staff directly. He had noticed, though, that she always said thank you when a door was held. Not everyone did. The night that changed everything between them was a Thursday in November, and it began unremarkably. The Alderton was hosting a dinner for a consortium of European hotel investors, 42 guests, full buyout of the rooftop event space. Marcus was assigned extended shift. He would work until the dinner wound down, then cover the lobby until the overnight porter arrived at 2. It was a long night, but not an unusual one. He had covered extended shifts before. He arranged for his neighbor, Mrs. Ibarra, to stay with Zara, packed Zara's lunch for the next morning before he left, and told her he would be there when she woke up. Promise? Zara had asked. Promise, Marcus had said, and meant it. The dinner went long. It was past midnight when the last guests filtered down from the rooftop, and Marcus was clearing a luggage cart near the service corridor when he heard the elevator reach the lobby level, and then nothing. No footsteps, no voices. He checked around the corner. Naomi Voss was sitting on the floor of the elevator, her back against the mirrored wall, her heels beside her and not on her feet. One of the champagne bottles from the rooftop was uncapped, and she was holding it loosely in one hand, not drinking from it, just holding it, and her eyes were open, and she was staring at nothing he could see. The elevator doors had begun to close. They hit her extended foot and slid open again. The censor was patient. Marcus stood there for 3 seconds, making a calculation that had nothing to do with career risk and everything to do with what a person does when another person is sitting on the floor of a closing elevator at midnight. He walked over. He crouched down to her level. Ms. Voss, she looked at him without recognition, which was not surprising. The doors keep opening. Her voice was careful in the way of someone concentrating on being careful. They will keep doing that until you stand up. She looked at the doors. She looked at the champagne bottle. She appeared to be considering the physics. My apartment is on 12, she finally said. I know which floor the executive suites are on. She looked at him then. Actually looked, not through. You're the one who carries things. Marcus, he offered his hand. She took it, and he brought her to her feet in one steady motion. She was taller than he expected, even without the heels. She leaned, not heavily, into his steadying arm, the champagne bottle she kept. He walked her to the elevator. He pressed 12. The doors closed, and she stood beside him, and they rode up in silence. And she did not say anything until the doors opened onto the private hallway of the executive floor, at which point she said, "My father thinks I can't run a hotel." Marcus said nothing. He walked her to her door. He came to the dinner tonight. He sat at the table and corrected my French and told the Belgians I had studied in Lausanne, as though Lausanne were a consolation prize for not studying somewhere more serious. She was having some difficulty with her keycard. He took it from her gently, pressed it to the reader, heard the click, handed it back. "Thank you." The same tone she used when a door was held. Automatic, genuine. "Good night, Ms. Voss." She went inside. He went back downstairs and finished his shift. What a person says at midnight, unguarded, is rarely what they want you to have heard. What they mean, that is another question entirely. He told no one, not Mrs. Ibarra, not his colleague Desmond, who covered the east desk and noticed everything. Not his mother, when she called that Sunday evening and asked how he was holding up. His mother, Adwoa, had a gift for asking the same question 3 different ways until she found the one that got through. She tried the job, then the hours, then Marcus. "When last did someone take care of you?" He was standing in the kitchen with Zara's drawings spread across the table. "I'm fine, Mama. That is not what I asked." "And Celeste?" The word landed the way it always did, like a hand placed suddenly on a bruise. Adwoa did not say it cruelly. She said it because she believed that not saying a person's name was a worse thing to do to them than saying it. "Celeste is gone 2 years in January. I know how long she has been gone. I'm asking if you have let anyone close enough to see that." Zara sees it. Zara is 7. He looked at his daughter's drawing. He now recognized the large circular shapes as planets, Saturn with its rings, Jupiter with its storms. His daughter was drawing the solar system from memory at the kitchen table. "There's nothing to see, Mama. I am fine. I go to work, I come home, I take care of her." Adwoa was quiet in the way that meant she had more to say and had decided not to. "All right. Tell Zara her grandmother loves her." He told Zara. Zara looked up from Jupiter and said, "Tell her I'm naming the moons." He did not sleep well that night. He did not sleep well most nights. This had been true since the January 2 years ago, when he had come home from the night shift at the contracting firm where he had worked before the Alderton, back when he still had the license current and a different version of his life, and found Celeste on the bathroom floor with her eyes open in a way that told him before anything else did. The emergency room had discharged her the previous week, low priority. Rest and fluids. He had read the discharge paperwork 6 times in the weeks after, looking for where the error was, looking for the sentence that should have been different, and he had found it, and he had done nothing with the finding, because doing something with it would have required a version of himself that did not also need to make oatmeal every morning and be present for school pickup. He had kept the paperwork. It was in the same drawer as the engineering license. He kept both of them for reasons he had not fully named. The problem started 6 days after the dinner. He was in the staff break room when the assistant manager, a compact, quick-moving man named Roland Fitch, came in and shut the door behind him. Roland was the kind of man who had decided very early what each rung of the ladder meant and had organized his entire personality around the distance between rungs. He managed through implication and the strategic withholding of schedule clarity. "You were on extended shift last Thursday." Roland set a hand on the back of a chair. "I was. There's a question about a missing bottle from the rooftop inventory. $140 of product." He was watching Marcus with the attention of someone who has already decided the answer. "You were the last staff member in the event space." "I was clearing the cart. I didn't remove any bottles. I'm not saying you did." Roland smiled tightly. "I'm just noting that you were there." "Then note it." Roland left. Marcus sat with his coffee and did not follow the man into the hallway. He had learned, through practice and through loss, that the correct response to being accused of something you did not do is to become very still and very clear and to wait. He waited 4 days. On the 5th day, Desmond sat across from him at lunch. "Roland's putting something together." "What kind of something?" "The kind that gets a person written up so there's paper on them." Desmond had worked at the Alderton for 9 years. "He's been asking around about your extended shifts, whether you ever go to floors you're not assigned to." Marcus set his fork down. 12? 12, Desmond looked at him with something adjacent to pity. Whatever happened on 12, somebody saw something, and Roland has decided it's useful. Marcus ate the rest of his lunch in silence. He thought about Zara and the promise he had made about being home when she woke up on Thursday. He thought about the engineering license in the drawer and the 2 years he had lost to grief and to a hospital that had sent Celeste home with instructions to rest the week before she did not wake up. He thought about what it would cost Zara if he lost this job. He thought about Naomi Voss saying, "My father thinks I can't run a hotel," and the way she had actually looked at him in the elevator. Not through him. He thought, she may not even remember. He requested a meeting with Roland that afternoon and was told Roland was unavailable. He left a note asking for the formal documentation process if a complaint was being filed against him. He received no response. What he received 2 days later was a shift schedule with his hours cut by 11, including the 3 Friday afternoon slots. He took the new schedule home. He sat at the kitchen table after Zara was asleep and looked at it for a long time. The 3 Friday slots were highlighted in the sheet. He thought about Mrs. Ibarra, who was 71 and had bad ankles but would never say so, and about what it meant to ask her to cover those hours twice a month, indefinitely, while he worked for a man who had decided his utility was inversely proportional to his inconvenience. He thought about Celeste, who had been meticulous about schedules, who had kept a paper calendar on the kitchen wall with every school pickup highlighted in blue. He took out a sheet of paper and began to write. The quiet ones are not always the ones who have accepted the situation. Sometimes they are the ones who have already decided. Zara found him at the table the next morning, the paper still in front of him, the pen beside it. She was in her pajamas, the ones with the small bears on them, and she looked at the paper and then at him, and then she said, "Are you writing something important?" "I think so." She climbed into the chair across from him and pulled her knees to her chest and looked at him with her mother's tilt. "Is it about your job?" "Why would you think that?" "Because you've been making the same face you made when you had to call the hospital. The face where you're being very polite to something that doesn't deserve it." He looked at her. 7 years old. Celeste's collarbone. Celeste's tilt. It's about the job. Then, just tell the truth. Zara climbed down, as though this were obvious, as though this were simple, as though the world rewarded people who told the truth without any additional machinery in place. She climbed down and went to make herself breakfast from the fruit in the bowl he had left on the counter. And Marcus picked up the pen and added the last line to the letter. The letter was a resignation. He had written it plainly. He was resigning from his position as night porter, effective 2 weeks hence, citing a schedule change that conflicted with his childcare obligations. He had not mentioned Roland. He had not mentioned the bottle or the implication. He had not mentioned anything about the executive floor. He sealed the letter in an envelope addressed to the general manager and put it in his jacket pocket. He did not file it that night. He went to work and covered his shift, and on the way out, at 1:30 in the morning, he stopped at the front desk and asked the overnight clerk to add it to the morning's mail. He could not take that back. He went home and relieved Mrs. Ibarra and sat in the chair beside Zara's bed and listened to her breathe and understood, with a clarity that did not comfort him, that he had made the right choice for the wrong situation. Because there was no right situation, only the choice to be findable by the people who needed to find him. He sat there for a while with the engineering license in mind. He had not taken it out of the drawer in 4 months, but he knew what was in it, the renewal form, the continuing education hours he had completed, and then let lapse, the 2 recommendation letters from colleagues at the old firm who had not known, when they wrote them, that he would need them for a life that no longer resembled the one they had signed their names to. The license was not expired. It was 3 months from expiring. There was still time, technically. There had been technically time for 8 months, and he had done nothing with the technically. He thought about the drawer, and he thought about the resignation letter, and he thought about the difference between the two. One was a document he had been afraid to act on, and one was a document he had acted on in the middle of the night, without waiting for permission or certainty or a better option. He thought about what it would take to be that decisive about the drawer. He did not reach a conclusion. He went to check on Zara one more time, and she was still breathing, and still asleep, and still herself. And then he sat in the kitchen until it was light enough to get dressed and go back. Some debts are not financial. They are the kind where a person shows up at a certain hour and the only currency is their presence. 3 days before the resignation letter, Marcus was routing a luggage cart through the east corridor when a man he recognized from the lobby photograph walked in from the street. Elliot Voss was in his mid-70s and carried the particular posture of someone who had never once been asked to make themselves smaller. He was not physically imposing, but he occupied space the way a person does when every room they have entered has rearranged itself around them without being asked. He looked at the lobby, at the marble, the low light, the staff moving through it, with the assessing expression of a man checking on a possession. He stopped when Marcus came through with the cart and did not move aside. Marcus stopped the cart. "Good morning." Elliot Voss looked at him, at the uniform, the cart, the name tag, with the brief, comprehensive inventory of someone accustomed to categorizing quickly. 14th floor? Elevators to your left. The man looked at him for a moment longer than the question required. You work this lobby regularly? Extended shifts as well. Another beat. Something behind the older man's eyes was doing a kind of arithmetic Marcus recognized from other contexts. My daughter runs a tight ship. The hotel runs well. Elliot Voss held his gaze for one more second, then turned toward the elevators without further comment. Marcus watched him go and continued to the east entrance. He thought about it for the rest of the shift, the way the question had been phrased, not pride, not confidence, but a check-in. A man arriving unannounced to take the temperature of something he still considered his. He thought about Naomi saying, "My father thinks I can't run a hotel," and about what it must feel like to have your competence treated as a hypothesis requiring ongoing verification. He thought about Zara, who had never once made him feel that her love was conditional. He did not know what Elliot Voss said to Naomi on the 14th floor that afternoon, or what she said back. He found out much later that the conversation had lasted 9 minutes, and had ended with Naomi asking her father to leave the building, the first time in the history of the company she had done so. She had sat alone in her office afterward for the better part of an hour, looking at the city. Then she had called down to the front desk to ask if Marcus Osai was in the building. He had not been. He found out about the call 3 days later, the morning he came in to finish his shift, the morning after he had already sent the letter. He was not scheduled until the afternoon, but he came in at 7 because he had nowhere else to be, and because he needed to think inside the building rather than outside it. He changed into the uniform in the break room and went to the lobby and was straightening the luggage rack near the east corridor when the elevator opened and Naomi Voss walked out. She was in a different kind of suit today, darker, quieter. She was carrying her own bag, which she did not usually do. She stopped when she saw him. He did not look away. "Marcus," she said it like she was testing whether it was the right word. "Good morning." She looked at him for a moment. She looked at the lobby around them, the overnight clerk still at the desk, 2 guests moving toward the breakfast room, a bellman bringing a cart in from the side entrance. Then she said, "Would you come upstairs for a moment?" He considered this. "I'm not assigned to 12. I'm asking you to come upstairs, not as an assignment." He followed her to the elevator. They rode to 14, her office floor, not the suite, and she unlocked the corner office and left the door open and set her bag on the desk and turned to face him. The windows were still grey. Sunrise was maybe 15 minutes out. "I need you to tell me what happened on Thursday." Nothing happened. "Marcus," she sat on the edge of the desk. "I know what I did. I know how I got to my room. I have been going over it all week, and I owe you something, and I don't know what it is yet, but I also need to know what you saw and what you've said, because I have a board meeting in 6 days, and my father." She stopped. She pressed her fingers against the desk surface as though steadying herself on a moving thing, what he would do with that information. Marcus looked at her. He thought about Roland's tight smile. He thought about the missing bottle and the cut shifts and the envelope he had dropped in the morning mail 4 hours ago. "I haven't said anything. I carried you to your floor. You told me your room number. I opened your door and went back to work. That's all that happened." She exhaled. Something left her face that had been there all week. I also put my resignation in the mail this morning. She looked up. It went in before I came here. So I need you to understand that this is not a negotiation. I'm not asking you for anything. I'm telling you what happened, and then I'm going to finish whatever's left of my shift and go home to my daughter. Why did you resign? My schedule was changed. The new hours conflict with school pickup. She was very still. Roland changed your schedule. The schedule changed. I don't have documentation of why. Marcus, her voice, had a different quality now. Not softer, exactly, but stripped of the formal layer she usually wore. Roland came to me last week. He told me he had a concern about a staff member on the extended shift who may have been on a floor he wasn't assigned to. Marcus said nothing. He didn't name you. He described you. She looked at him steadily. I told him to document everything formally and bring it to HR. He said he would. He hasn't. She paused. Do you know why he hasn't? Because there's nothing to document. Because there's nothing to document, she agreed, and because what he actually wanted was for me to handle it informally, to make it go away. She stood up from the desk and walked to the window. The sky was going from grey to the first pale gold. He wanted me to fire you quietly so that I would have a reason to fire you. So that if what happened Thursday ever became a problem, there would already be a paper trail making you the problem. Marcus looked at her profile against the light. I didn't know that until 3 days ago. I should have seen it sooner. It doesn't change what I sent this morning. I know. She turned from the window. She was looking at him the same way she had in the elevator, actually at him, not at the uniform or the brass name tag or the category he was supposed to occupy. Can I ask you something? You can ask. Why are you here today? You resigned. You didn't have to come in. He thought about how to answer this in a way that was true and not more than true. I made a promise to my daughter that I would be home when she woke up on Thursday. I kept it. I'm trying to keep all of them. She looked at him for a moment. The light in the room was changing, warmer, coming in at a lower angle now, the sun clearing the building across the street and falling across the floor in a long pale rectangle that reached the base of the desk. He thought about Elliot Voss in the lobby. He thought about the 11 minutes on the 14th floor and Naomi sitting alone afterward, looking at the city. He thought about what it had cost her to call down and ask if he was in the building on his day off, and what it had cost her to come here this morning and close the door and sit across from him with all of it visible in her face. He had been asked, in his life, to carry many things. Mostly he carried them without being asked. She opened her mouth and closed it once. He waited. Then she opened it again, and what she said was very quiet, said not to the CEO or the porter or the employee or any of the categories that had organized this whole conversation, but simply from one person to another person standing in a room at sunrise, the light now fully gold between them. Please don't tell anyone. She held his gaze. Not about Thursday, not yet. Give me until the board meeting. 6 days. He looked at her for a long time. And then, he said, and then I'm going to need someone in this building who actually tells the truth. A request made at sunrise, in a low voice, with nothing to offer except the asking, that is not the same as a demand. It is the moment when a person decides to trust rather than to manage, and the weight of that is entirely on them. He did not say yes. He picked up his jacket and said, I'll finish my shift, and walked out. He found Desmond at the east desk at 8:30 and told him he had resigned and would be leaving in 2 weeks. Desmond looked at him for a long moment and then said, Is this about Roland? It's about school pickup. Marcus, it's about school pickup. The firmness in his voice, enough that Desmond understood it was not the full answer, but was the answer Marcus intended to give. You know he's done this before, the schedule thing. There was a woman in housekeeping 2 years ago. He changed her hours until she couldn't make childcare work and she quit. Do you know her name? Paulette Renner. She's at the Fairmont now. Marcus nodded and went back to work. What he did not expect was Roland. Roland came to find him at 11 in the luggage room off the east corridor. And he came alone, which told Marcus something about how confident Roland was that this was still a conversation between two unequal people. He shut the door of the luggage room behind him and he said, I heard you put in your notice. Yes, smart. Roland folded his arms. He had a way of making folded arms look like the crossed bars of a gate. I was going to handle this professionally, but this is cleaner, easier for everyone. Marcus set down the bag he had been logging. He straightened up and turned fully to face Roland and said nothing. You should know, Roland continued, that whatever you think you saw or did or helped with on Thursday, none of that is anything I can't make a problem. A porter alone with the CEO in her suite. At midnight, he let the sentence sit. That's the kind of thing people remember, the kind of thing that follows a man. The air in the luggage room was very still. Marcus looked at Roland the way he had looked at hospital discharge paperwork, with a kind of technical patience, searching for where exactly the wrongness lived. You're threatening me. I'm describing a situation in a room with no witnesses. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket, the one where the resignation letter had been, and set his phone on the top shelf of the luggage rack, screen visible, recording app running. He had turned it on when Roland had shut the door. Roland looked at the phone. The gate dropped. I want you to leave this building. His voice had lost its architecture. I gave 2 weeks' notice. I'm working my shift. Marcus picked up the bag he had been logging. You're welcome to send HR in here. I'll give them the same recording. Roland left. He did not slam the door. He closed it carefully, which was worse. Marcus went back to work. That afternoon he picked Zara up from school and told her the true parts. The elevator, the woman, the office at sunrise, the letter he had already sent. Zara listened with her head tilted. Do you think she's going to tell the truth? He thought about Naomi's face at the window, the first gold light. I think she wants to. That's different from doing it. She was right, and he didn't argue. Naomi called the general manager that afternoon. She explained enough. The schedule change for a specific employee appeared to have been made for reasons unrelated to operational need, and she needed the original schedule reinstated while HR conducted a review. She also asked for the contact information for Paulette Renner, who had worked in housekeeping 2 years prior. Roland Fitch received a written notice that a formal HR review had been opened. The following morning, HR received Marcus's phone recording with a one-line note. This was recorded with my device in the luggage storage room. I recommend asking HR counsel. He was not certain the recording was admissible. He was certain Roland did not know that. Marcus received a call the next morning from the general manager's office. His resignation was being held pending a review. His schedule was being reinstated. He was under no obligation to withdraw. He said he understood. He thought about the resignation letter in the envelope, already opened, already real. He thought about Zara asking, is she going to tell the truth, and about the difference between wanting to and doing it. He waited. There is a particular endurance required of people who do not perform their worry. They carry it in the chest, steady and private, and they show up anyway. It looks, from the outside, like calm. The evening before the board meeting, Mrs. Ibarra came to sit with Zara while Marcus went to buy groceries, and when he came back she was still at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, and Zara was asleep, and Mrs. Ibarra was looking at him the way she had been looking at him for 2 years. Sit down. He put the groceries away first. She waited. When he finally sat across from her, she wrapped both hands around her cup and said, Zara told me about the woman at your job. Zara talks to you about my job. Zara talks to me about everything. Mrs. Ibarra was 71 and had been their neighbor since before Celeste had died, since before any of it, since the time when Marcus would wave to her from the front step on his way to the contracting firm with his license current, with his life arranged in an order that made sense. She had helped him pack Celeste's clothes. He had not asked her to. She had simply appeared with boxes. She said you resigned from your job to protect your hours for her school pickup. The schedule changed. Marcus, I am not Roland. She looked at him steadily. You do not have to be careful with your words here. He was quiet. The apartment was very still around them. I didn't know what else to do. It was the truest thing he had said to another adult in longer than he could account for. Yes, you did. You did the only thing you know how to do. You showed up. She picked up her cup. Celeste used to say you were the kind of man who made everyone around him better without seeming to try. A pause. Go see if this woman is right about you now. She left at 9:30. Marcus sat at the table for a while, then went to check on Zara, who was asleep with her arms around the stuffed penguin she had named Gerald for reasons she never explained. The board meeting was on a Tuesday. Marcus was at school pickup when it happened. He found out what had happened in pieces over the following week. He found out first from Desmond, who had given a statement about Roland's pattern with scheduling. He found out second from Paulette Renner, who called to say the hotel's legal department had contacted her, and she had agreed to document her experience. She wanted to know if Marcus had as well. He agreed. He found out third from the general manager. Roland Fitch had been placed on administrative leave. A formal review of scheduling practices had been commissioned, and his resignation had been withdrawn by mutual agreement. His position and previous schedule would be restored if he chose to return. He said he would let them know. The last thing he found out was from Naomi herself. She did not call. She came to the hotel on a Saturday morning when Marcus was working the lobby desk while Desmond covered a delivery, and she walked in without her assistant and without her phone visibly in her hand, and she stopped in front of him. I told the board everything. What Roland was doing. What happened Thursday. She paused. I told them that a member of the night staff showed me more professional courtesy than most of the people in that room. How did they take it? My father walked out. He came back. We're working through it. A beat. I'm not deprioritizing the staff welfare review anymore. Good, are you coming back? He had thought about this for most of the week. He had thought about the engineering license in the drawer, and whether the Alderton was a stopping place or a destination. For now. Yes, she nodded. She was almost to the door when she stopped and turned. The welfare review needs someone to chair the staff side, a coordinator stipend, twice a month. It requires someone the hourly staff actually trust. He held her gaze. Send me the terms in writing, she smiled, not the dinner for investors kind, the kind that knew it was being seen. I'll have them on your desk by Wednesday. She left. Marcus went back to the desk. Desmond appeared from the east corridor and leaned on the counter. She looked at you differently. People look at people differently when they're not looking through them. What are you going to do about the license? Marcus looked at him. The engineering license. I looked you up 6 months ago. There are not many Marcus Osais in structural engineering. He shrugged. I wasn't going to say anything. Then all this happened. The renewal fees are substantial. I imagine a coordinator stipend helps. It was the kind of exchange that did not require further architecture. Zara, when he picked her up from school that afternoon, asked if everything was okay now. Getting there, she thought about this for half a block. Is the lady going to be okay? I think so. She's working on it. Zara nodded, satisfied with the honest version of things. She selected a library book that evening, something about deep-sea creatures, illustrated, and they read 2 chapters after dinner. Sitting on the couch with her feet across his lap and the lamplight steady over the pages, she fell asleep before the 2nd chapter ended, and Marcus sat there with the book still open and the lamplight still on and her feet still across his lap, and did not move for a long time. The things that hold do not always announce themselves. They arrive in the form of a kept promise, a steady lamp, a child's weight across your knees at the end of the day. Whatever you carry out into the world, it is this you carry it from.